Work from home was one of the trends that impacted so many industries we've covered in our series, Where Do We Go From Here? And this includes leisure and hospitality, transportation, and real estate as just a couple of examples. But like all things COVID, these changes created a lot of stress as workers lost their jobs and other workers had to adapt to new work arrangements. And to add to the stress, schools were closed, and kids now had to share a classroom with your home office. I mean, how do you balance the conference call, the deadline, unstable Wi-Fi, and trying to help your kids learn long division in a way you've never seen? Or how about deciding if it's safe for high schoolers to go back, or college students to return to campus? Or maybe even for teachers who are at risk from contracting the virus from younger people who may be asymptomatic. Geez, it's like harder than 8th period calculus, and definitely more risky. Where do we go from here? How do we overcome, adapt, and thrive in a time of COVID? How do we look beyond the chaos that's occurring today to gain confidence in the future? I'm Andy Busch, and my job right now is to answer these questions for you. In this short video, we're going to answer where do we go from here and explore With the outbreak of the virus in February, the U.S. government decided to shut down the economy in March and April. Now, this drove tremendous demand for information technology to integrate into education and drove demand for digital learning. But school shutdowns happened so fast that most educators and students didn't have the experience or the training necessary for this new method of learning. When the federal government rescinded the shutdown, states had to decide what was the best path forward for both business and education. And of course, there was no national reopening strategy for states to follow. But to some extent, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? Because California is so vastly different from Iowa when it comes to the virus. State and local governments, of course, here in the U.S., have the most control on education. But they were faced with impossible choices at first. I mean, should we keep schools closed to ensure no rapid spread of the virus? Or how about what age groups are most likely to contract it? Can officials create classrooms that are safe for both students and teachers alike? You know, some states opened up faster, like Georgia, but then had to shut down again after major outbreaks. Other states decided that online learning from home was the best way to finish the school year. And colleges? Well, colleges like Notre Dame modified attendance levels and schedules to bring students back to the class in the fall. Hybrid structures appeared in various shapes and sizes, from a 3-day-a-week schedules with in-classroom teaching to an AM/PM shift for students. By the way, here's a snapshot of all the different types of plans. Parents homeschooled as well, and some parents even created learning pods where parents could homeschool together in small groups. You know, I think everyone realized this was going to be a challenging way to educate, but the entire country was essentially a test case to see what could work. And everyone knew that online education benefited students that had internet, that had computers, and had conditions that would allow students to focus. And this was a huge disadvantage for many low-income and middle-income families and school districts that didn't have funding to provide the students with the necessary technology to succeed. In other words, it was crucial to find a way back to the classroom. Like work from home for business, at-home schooling online has benefits and a lot of drawbacks. And for younger students, there is a serious need to be in a classroom to create the conditions for the highest potential for learning and socializing so critical for child development. Also, you know, many schools provide meals critical for healthy students and healthy learning. Ever try to understand math on an empty stomach? It's pretty hard. You know, and while some school districts are still doing their best to provide hot meals for students, sometimes it's not easy for those students to get to the school to pick them up. But there are other options. And since the outset of the coronavirus outbreak, the USDA has provided states with broad flexibilities to ensure the continuation of meal service during COVID-19 related school closures. And they set up remote sites to provide kids with meals. That's great news. Okay, getting back to the way forward for education, I think we need to break this down by age groups. Okay, let's do that. And to be cautious, let's take the CDC guidelines as gospel and have everyone wear masks as the protocol until otherwise proven wrong. I mean, look, why not be a little bit careful and keep things open and running? Okay, let's dive in. Now, K through 5 are the most critical to get back in the classroom as they benefit the most from the structure. Now, 6th through 8th grades or middle school, well, they need to be in school as well, but can likely work with a hybrid schedule to maintain learning and social levels. High school is tough because the older the students are, the more likely they are to be impacted by the virus from the studies that I've seen. Again, hybrid is a solid choice here. But classrooms need to be more than just ready for this choice. And I don't mean masks and just PPE gear. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've learned a lot more about how this virus spreads. And it's pretty clear from what I've seen that it's an airborne virus that spreads more rapidly in a poorly ventilated environment. Now, this doesn't bode well for schools that have older, outdated buildings. In June, the U.S. Government Accountability Office reported that to prevent the spread of the virus inside schools, more than 41% of the school districts needed to update or replace their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in at least half their buildings. Now, while many states are passing bills to fund this, they really could use some help from the federal government and a federal government stimulus plan. Okay, returning to school, and it shouldn't just be about the books. I would add that sports, extracurricular activities should be looked at seriously to help students emotionally and for them to stay active. Like professional sports we've discussed in our other videos, these activities don't need fans or audiences for the students to participate. Go ahead, play basketball, football, tennis, golf, but also have theater and music and clubs. Look, this should be a choice for parents to make with guidance from administrators and teachers, all working collaboratively to find a path forward. This sums it up for parents. In a recent poll, 81% said they were concerned about their kids being exposed to the virus. Now that makes sense. But also, 81% said they believed their children's academic and emotional well-being depended on them being back in school. Okay, let's switch over to teachers. Now, teachers have a really difficult choice as well. I mean, should they do remote only to reduce the risk, or can they use PPE gear to teach in the classroom safely? Some have retired. Some have chosen to take administrative jobs, and some have had the choice made for them as layoffs occurred due to the economic downturn. Now, colleges face similar circumstances for their returning students and professors, except these students are older and are of drinking age, and that means parties, and that makes it really hard to manage the virus. And it's clear they're happening way more than reported as we've seen COVID cases rise at universities. Now, unfortunately, part of college kids' thinking is that they see this COVID as a cold that they will get over in a week. And they really don't understand the ramifications of it. And of course, the big burning question is this: if college students are online or remote, why are they paying like they are intending in person? Now, sure, some discounts are being given, but how long will colleges and universities that are financially strapped on the edge and being able to remain open? I don't know how long that's going to happen. And remember, lack of in-person education has major ramifications beyond education. food service comes to mind, as no school lunches or no college cafeterias are a big negative for this industry. All right, taking a step back, education has amazing challenges as it's accelerated the interface between technology and knowledge. But if students don't go back, it will also accelerate the gap between the haves and the have-nots on education. And this gap falls mainly on low-income and middle-income families. And this will cause the destruction of learning opportunities and opportunities for advancement in an increasingly knowledge-based economy. And we must make sure that that doesn't happen. So the good news is that every parent wants a better outcome, as do administrators and teachers and professors and politicians. Hey, we'll figure this out. But this would help. And the sooner,